Knicks lose last night, 92-91. Good effort. Effort was there. My partner Zach By wants nothing about effort. He wants wins. He wants wins. Effort.
You should be baseline. You're a pro athlete.
You want effort every night. Steve Popper is all about effort. I know that with the Bergen record, and Steve joins us on Big Board Sports to talk a little bit about the Knicks and the NBA. Good morning, Steve. Rodger, Wyland in Albany on ESPN Radio along with Zach By.
It takes all the effort we have to survive a season with this team.
I mean, I don't even know where to start. I mean, let's start with the whole tanking thing. I mean, are the Knicks tanking this rest of this season, or does it just appear that way with some of the moves that Phil Jackson makes?
Well, I think the coach isn't tanking. The players may not be tanking, but the front office seems to be tanking. Clearly they've cut ties with Brandon Jennings. They presented it as if this was an upgrade, to bring Chase and Randall in. But anytime you're bringing in a guy, a D-leaguer who was cut by the Sixers, I'm not sure that's an upgrade over what you've got. Randall's a nice player, but they're looking to cut pieces, cut contracts, and to be honest, at the trade deadline they were looking to move their two most expensive players. I think that they're looking ahead to next year, and the problem is the same one that it's always been for Phil. Is sure, it's good to tank and get a pick and get have cap space and clear room under the cap, but if you're not making the right decisions with it, which they haven't during Phil's entire time here, what's the point? You're clearing cap space to sign guys, and it seems like every summer we're announcing the signings of 4 or 5 new guys, and then by the trade deadline we're looking to get rid of them.
I mean, it's becoming pretty clear here, Steve, that Phil Jackson was an incredible coach. Right, really good. He got 11 rings. We know that. But in terms of him running a franchise and running the Knicks and making good personnel moves, he has failed miserably at that.
Well, he failed miserably at that, and that's not so surprising. It's a different job. It's a tough job. I think the bigger thing that he's failed at is, basically the things that he promised in his introduction. We knew he was coming in as a guy with no front office experience, and more than that, a guy who'd burned a lot of bridges during his coaching years. And that's not how you do the business when you're in the front office. You've got to have friends around the league. You've got to make calls. You've got to have context. You have to interact with these guys from other teams and try and, develop ways of making deals, have a network of finding players, and that he's never done. But beyond that, he promised transparency and openness with the media and the fans. There's no one in the league who has disappeared more than he has. Then, you look at... He had said, talking about creating a culture for the players, where it's comfortable and they're confident and they feel at home here. Well, his own players don't feel that way. Carmelo Anthony certainly doesn't feel that way. And he's taken a guy like Carmelo, who is very popular in the league. While fans may have their doubts about him, he is very popular around the league. He's a longtime veteran who is friends with some of the most prominent players in the league. Has been part of the Olympic team 4 times. He's a guy who has a lot of connections, and players are standing up and seeing what's happening to him. I think, and players have been pretty open about it. This is going to hurt them in free agency. That given all things being equal, New York is not now the first choice for guys. That if you can get your money somewhere else, why do I want to go to dysfunction? Why do I want to go to a place where the guy's going to be taking shots at me in the paper or, tweeting out strange things about me? These guys consider themselves brands, and I think no one wants to be a part of something like that. Can they get players? Sure. They have money. They'll have money under the cap, and they'll get the guys who they're going to overpay for or have nowhere else to go. But if you look at what Phil's done over the last couple of years, he hasn't even been able to get meetings with some of the most prominent free agents, that he thought he was going to sit down and make pushes for. Kevin Durant sat down with Carmelo Anthony. He didn't sit down with Phil Jackson. So, I think the whole thing has been a disaster from the start. And, I can't say it's a surprise. I don't think it was the smartest move to bring him in. I think at the time, it was a PR move. You could have, for the money you're paying him, you certainly could have gotten your choice of any executive in the league.
Steve, I think that fans of the Knicks would be okay with losing games and going another year without making the playoffs if there was light at the end of the tunnel, if there was some real direction, almost like we've seen with the Yankees. Yeah, they've missed the playoffs a couple of years, but we know that the future is bright. Or even if you want to keep with the NBA, with the Sixers, there seems to be direction. There seems to be a goal at the end. What is the direction and goal of the Knicks that would inspire optimism for Knicks fans?
I'm the wrong person for this. Look, we asked Carmelo Anthony that at the trade deadline. Do you understand what the vision is now? They didn't make these deals, but they were trying to move guys. Do you understand what they want to do here in the future? And he said openly, no. He doesn't. And this is a guy who wanted to be part of the decision-making process, who wanted to help recruit free agents. Your star player doesn't know where you're going, and I think that's with good reason because they're going backwards. Even a year ago, there was, hope that Kristaps Porzingis was going to be, take this huge step forward and be ready to take over the team. And, I think they're fooling themselves if they think that time has come. I think he's actually regressed a little this year, and part of it is not his fault. I think he's a good, hardworking, talented player, but, you've got so much dysfunction here, so many different systems. I mean, you're on your fourth head coach, and, already this season, there's kind of been this, ridiculous melding of the triangle with what Jeff Hornacek really wants to do, and then when they struggled, now it's back to the triangle. You've got so many different teammates, different coaches, different voices. I think it's tough for a 21-year-old kid. I think, this notion that they were going to move Carmelo and leave Kristaps as the face of the franchise, I think would have been even more detrimental for him. On the court, Carmelo takes a lot of pressure off him. And in the locker room, Carmelo takes a lot of pressure off. I don't think the 21-year-old kid wants to be the one who's got to sit there and answer for all this craziness, which Phil, front office, never does speak for. So it's always left to Jeff Hornacek and one of the players to answer for.
Steve Popper with us from the Bergen Record, talking NBA basketball, and in particular the New York Knicks, who lost by 1 to Toronto last night, 92-91. Steve, though, all right, so Phil Jackson does send a message to everyone like, hey, listen, we're moving on here. And you release Jennings. It shows the players in that team that, you know what, we've got to plan for the future and make some moves here. But from a player standpoint, last night, Steve, they did have energy, they did have effort, they looked like they did actually care despite everything going on. They played a good game against Toronto. If Melo makes a 15-foot jump shot with nobody within 5 feet of them, they win a game. So are the players, how do you see the players playing out the rest of this season? Are they going to give it 110%? Do you still give them a fighting chance to make the playoffs?
I don't give them a shot at the playoffs. I think, look, no matter how hard you play, I think the just reality is the games you are behind, the games you have left, and how many teams you have to jump is a big part of it. They put themselves in too big of a hole. They're not in 9th place. They're in 12th. They're closer to dropping to 14th than they are to getting to the 8th seed. I think that, the players, will, for the most part, play hard. There's been a couple nights here, the Laker game in particular, I remember, where you could see some quit in the team, and that was distressing. But, the Sixer game on Saturday and the game last night against Toronto, they did play hard. And you see when they play hard, they're what they are. They're a mid-league team, a team that blows a 17-point lead to the Sixers and needs a Carmelo basket at the end to win it, and a team that blows a 17-point lead last night and, needs a Carmelo shot at the buzzer to try and save it and didn't get it this time, which is what happens. Sometimes they go in, sometimes they don't. I think you're going to see some nights where they look dead and some nights they look, like they're trying, because most of them, honestly, are playing for the future. Derrick Rose is playing for a new contract. That's the situation Brandon Jennings was in. But a lot of young guys on this team are the same way. They're playing for their roles for next year. There's going to be another free agent, flurry of activity this summer coming, and there's going to be, probably a lottery pick. So guys, are going to go out there and try and see what they can do. I think the one to keep an eye on is Carmelo, who has played better and harder, I thought, over the last month or so. Through all this, turmoil, he actually has played pretty well and scored well and hustled, and I think for the most part played pretty well. But does he keep that up? Look, at some point, frustration has to set in on his part too.
Well, he looked visibly upset last night after he missed that shot that would have won the game. So we'll see how it all plays out. Disappointing, though. There's no doubt if you're a Knicks fan, preseason, they were expecting a whole lot better. But the Garden's still sold out, right, Steve? They pack it every night?
Well, it's the corporate sellout on a lot of nights, and you'll see a lot of tickets I think handed out to clients or families and friends or the friends of friends that you can get to go to these, and they're happy. Mostly you get T-shirts shot out of cannons at them. They're not seeing a great show here. This is not the Golden State Warriors. This is not the San Antonio Spurs. It's dysfunction. It's the Charles Oakley thing that happened. It's just strangeness and disappointment is in the air there every night. It does sell out. It's sold out in advance, and I think until that changes, they don't change. Until people stop coming. These little middling protests they do of a couple fans that holding signs outside for Dolan to sell the team. I don't think it achieves much. As long as they sell out, they're happy. They do what they do. Dolan, when in one of his rare appearances, did come out after the Oakley thing and say that Phil is, not being tampered with. He's going to stay the length of his contract. He's going to let him do what he does, and what he's done is, take the Knicks further down the hole than they were when he got here.
Steve Popper, Bergen Record, NBA New York Knicks. Appreciate a few minutes here on Big Board Sports. We'll talk to you down the road.
You got it anytime.